All right, first of all, I want to welcome all of you once again to our 99th Annual League of Oregon Cities Conference. I'm glad you're all here. I'm going to put in a shameless plug for next fall's conference, the 100th Annual Conference that'll be held up in Portland. I've been told on more than one occasion it's going to be quite the event, so if you can make it, try to plan for it ahead of time. For those of you that come from smaller cities, don't worry, scholarships will be available. All right, this title of this particular breakout session is Deploying More Infrastructure for Less Money and, most importantly, faster. I don't know about you, but my time in public service has been one of hurry up and maybe we'll get there someday. The faster we can get things done, the better. Their sponsor for, let's see, hang on a second, there we are. All right, and for those of you that don't know me, my name is Rod Cross. I'm the mayor of the city of Toledo and an LOC board member. We want to welcome you again here today. I'm sure you've heard this ad nauseum, but please provide feedback on the LOC app on your take on this session. And I'm going to introduce our speakers and get right into it. First off, Jonathan Honeywell, engineer from Orinoco Systems, or Enco Systems, pardon me. Seth Buckley, co-founder of 3PO Networks. Seth Haig, founding principal of MAG AMB Development. And Steve Rose, lead technician for Septic Technologies. Please join me in welcoming our speakers. And Seth Buckley, I'm turning it over to you. Enlighten us, please.
Well, it's an honor to be here. Just to frame it up, I want to talk a little bit about the problem we're trying to solve, and then we're going to have a panel discussion, and then we're going to have Q&A, and then I'm going to make an exciting announcement that we chose the 99th Annual League of Oregon Cities Conference to make. So we have a housing crisis, so they tell us. The Fed chairman, Jerome Powell, a few months ago said that we're about 3.5 to 5.5 housing units short. And that's on top of the 1 to 1.5 million homes that are built every year. And so we have to ask ourselves, how did this crisis happen? And what are we going to do about it? Because if you think about a crisis, what creates a crisis, often the steps that need to be taken to get out of it aren't related directly to what got you there. We have to do other things. And so why do we have a crisis? Well, they say that in 2008, bad things happened with the global financial crisis, and frankly, a lot of developers got burned really bad, right? A lot of banks tightened things up. People still remember that far back. They have the scars. And so there's a lot of resistance to new development, and of course, we have issues around land use that we know about. There's rising construction costs. I think about Boise as a market. When Boise, last year, maybe 2 years ago, when they were building homes, the general contractors would not quote material. They would quote it, but they had a 30% variation that they were allowed because they just couldn't predict where the costs of housing, the materials were going to land. Of course, we have interest rates that are moving, and then we have a population that's growing. So all of that collides to create this thing that we are experiencing as a crisis of housing, affordable housing in particular. Well, what we're talking about today, this panel is actually talking about sewer infrastructure and how that plays a part in being a gating factor for housing growth. And sometimes that sewer infrastructure, the gating factor is treatment capacity, meaning cities haven't been investing in treatment and all of a sudden they want to grow. Maybe they even have land, but they're like, now we have a problem with our treatment capacity. Sometimes it's the cost of the infrastructure itself. It just doesn't pencil for the developer. Maybe it doesn't even pencil for the municipality. And sometimes it's that they've been put on notice, this consent decree. Some of my peers yesterday were in Cape Cod. Well, a lot of people don't know the whole place. There's very little municipal treatment. It's all septic, it's all water. And they've been told, you need to stop. You can't keep developing if you can't figure out how to treat your wastewater. So those things make sewer kind of this long pole in the development tent. And so my company, 3PO, and this will not be a shameless plug, but we're active all over the country at this point, relatively new company, but we have a project in Oregon that we're going to be talking about. And these fine gentlemen are involved in the project that we get to talk about. And so, as I mentioned, we were in Cape Cod yesterday. We've got projects in Florida, projects in New York. This is an issue everywhere. I saw at the iSector booth, they were saying that they were predicting we're like 144,000 homes short in just Oregon. So, amplify that all over the country. This is a big deal. But if you're going to solve a crisis, you have to let go of some of the sacred cows. And you all, as stakeholders, you know that. But you're also part of the sacred cow ecosystem. And we all have to come to grips with that. Because the things that got us there can't maintain exactly as they are if we're going to resolve this. So there's going to be disruption, right? It has to be manageable disruption, but there does have to be disruption. So where is the disruption going to come from? And I just highlighted 4 of these. It's going to come from relaxing land use and regulatory issues reasonably, right? You've probably heard about Senate Bill 1537, which was signed into law in March, which comes into effect next year, which encourages, jurisdictions throughout the state to make land available with certain goals being met. Disruption is going to come from technology. Part of what we're excited about is there's a lot of really interesting wastewater technology that's been created, but guess what? Everybody's still doing it the same way the Romans did 2,500 years ago, predominantly, with gravity sewer. There's other business models. There's market solutions and then there's government solutions, but in order to solve a real crisis, we have to actually look at both of those. Not just government solutions, but market solutions. And we're going to be talking a little bit about some of that today. And then there's traditions. My observation, and one of the things that got me excited about the wastewater industry, is I realized there were gatekeepers, particularly engineering firms, which were incentivized to use grant dollars and then get compensated as a percentage of cost for systems. And something about that just didn't seem right. And so that's a little bit about what we're going to talk about later on with this exciting announcement that I get to make. So now that I've set the stage, now that I've maybe picked a fight, now that I've made some claims that you're interested if we can back up, I'm going to introduce you to Seth Haig, who is the principal of MAGAM Development, and he's going to talk a little bit about his background, his project, and take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Seth. So I've known this man for about 5-6 years, so thank you for having me. MAGAM Development is a full-service real estate development company. I work on workforce housing, both affordable and workforce, hospitality, and land development. One of the projects that we're working on is in my hometown. I grew up in Seaside. I went to Seaside High School. Proud alum of University of Oregon. I see some Ducks out there, so let's go Ducks. So I'm picking my own fights. So had the opportunity to work with a developer who's owned this beautiful site right on the peninsula in Hammond, Oregon, and about 270 acres, right? We've done some extensive market studies of the site. You can see we've done about 60 acres we've recognized as the highest and best use of the 70 acres. We've applied a planned use development, a PUD, to extract some of the density from those roughly 210 acres to that 60 acres to maximize roughly 450 doors. So 210 of those are going to be 4% LIHTC apartments. And then there's going to be roughly 30 units of townhomes, for sale townhomes, that we're going to leverage some synergies we have with the volumetric modular industry. And then we're going to be building roughly 210 single-family detached homes. We are currently in the process of introducing a model that's really popular in the Sun Belt called Built to Rent. It's effectively a horizontal multifamily play where one owner will manage and own and operate all of these single-family detached units as a multifamily complex. We will also have the opportunity to sell these units, which will be roughly 1,600 to 1,800 square feet, 3 and 4 bedroom units. Again, looking to leverage volumetric modular to expedite the construction process and bypass some of the restrictions we have from a labor standpoint in some of these tertiary markets, such as Warrenton. So Gotta look at my notes.
Seth, can you also talk a little bit about what kind of drove the vacancy and kind of what drove that project?
Oh, sure. Yeah, sorry. So through the process of backing into the density, right, 450 units is kind of an arbitrary number if you don't back it up with data, right? So we were running comps around the county, and you can see a list. I think there's 5 or 6, maybe even a few more, maybe 8 or 10 different complexes that really have anywhere between 50 to 125 units, and maybe a few more. But the vacancy rate for that area, for Clatsop County, was 0.2%. And that includes market rate housing. It's ridiculously low. I've never seen anything like this. We ran this through Novogradic, which is a national market feasibility company, and they do this all around the country. And they actually apologized, thinking that they had misrepresented the data. And they actually went back and redid it for us, and they came back with the same number. So we were originally entitled for 316 single-family detached homes. We realized that there's an increasingly serious demand in this market for multifamily as well as for first-time home buyers. So we wanted to create a mix of housing options that we felt was going to be the highest and best use from a development standpoint, but also from a community involvement standpoint. In terms of some issues that we've been running into, obviously this is a relatively large development in that market. I believe it's the second or third largest in the county ever from a unit, per unit standpoint. And so we were running into some issues with wastewater treatment capacity, and had been working with the Mayor Balanciefer and City Manager Esther Moberg and their staff, who has been incredible to work with. We have had the opportunity to have an ongoing dialogue of where that capacity really was and where our timelines really would align. And unfortunately, we were not necessarily aligning on that front. So the development team had to go back to the drawing board and had to troubleshoot troubleshoot a little bit. And so we were looking at package treatment plants, maybe possibly bringing this just all on the private side, which is where we found Renco. And I actually called Jonathan, I don't know, maybe a year ago. And
About a year ago. A little less than a year.
A little less than a year ago, and we started the process of understanding what this would look like. And he came back and said, hey, we actually may have a better alternative for you, and could really make this cost-effective, and you're still able to hit your timeline. So that's where the Prelos system came in.
Jonathan, I'm going to give you the clicker. Green is
Perfect. All right. I am Jonathan Honeywell. I'm a mechanical engineer by trade. I work for Renco Systems. I'm also a local Oregonian. I live in a tiny little town called Sunny Valley, Oregon. It's a covered bridge and a gas station that's open 4 days a week. So really, really nothing out there. But that's what I love about Oregon. It's north of Grants Pass. I'm also an advocate for being outdoors. I ski, I surf, I hike, I kayak. I love being on the water, and I think Oregon, from the Alvord Desert to Mount Hood to Steens Mountains, Brookings, Chetco, Rogue River, there are so many beautiful parts of Oregon, and we need, as a whole, a collective, to protect these assets. These are what are going to provide revenue to the state. These are why people move to Oregon. I work for a company, Renco Systems. Renco Systems is based in Sutherland, Oregon, and it was founded in 1981. I think it's a pretty neat story on how it was founded, kind of off the same principles of let's protect our water. A small community called Glide, Oregon. It's right on the North Umpqua, right on the 138, gorgeous waterfalls on the way to Crater Lake. And this community reached out to our founder in the 80s and said, hey, we need a solution. We're seeing eutrophication, we're seeing nitrates, we're seeing pollution in our river, and we need to protect this infrastructure, our community, our salmon at all costs. So we reached out to the local professor at the Umpqua Community College, who was our founder, and said, can you help us with a solution? Our founder went around the country and looked at all the available options and came across what is called septic tank effluent pumping, or it's otherwise known as liquid-only sewer. He said, this is a great fit. It's completely sealed. We can run it very cost-effectively, and most of all, it's completely sealed, and we're going to move that wastewater away from any chance of doing harm to the North Umpqua. After he decided that this was a great solution, come to implement the project, and they're going to Home Depot, and they're buying PVC pipe and products. So he came up with a solution. Hey, this is my American dream. I can build this in my garage. Started manufacturing in his garage. Soon enough, the city of Sutherland said, hey, you can't have 30 people in your garage. So he created the company, Orenco Systems, and now it's feeding 400 families of local Oregonians in the state of Oregon. So I think that is, in a 40-year span to improve to that level and to provide that amount of families work in a small community such as Sutherland, Oregon, that's something to be proud of as an Oregonian, and I am 100% proud to work for a company such as Orenco Systems. So that's kind of what I would say how Orenco was started. And really, we do two things at Orenco Systems. We specialize in both sewer collection and we specialize in sewer treatment. They go hand in hand, but they really are two of their own individual issues, problems, instances you need to arise and come to conclusions on solutions for your community. We'll start with collection. The thing that we do differently, and I think we could maybe go to, I got the slide thing. All right, so here is a diagram of a community. The thing that we do differently than a traditional gravity sewer. Gravity sewer, if I was really going to be illustrative in your mind, where the Ninja Turtles live. So giant sewer, maybe 15 feet underneath the ground. The slope has to be perfectly right. It can't have too little flow. It can't have too much flow. It's a highly designed collection method, and it works great. If gravity is in your favor, 9.81 meters per second squared all day long, wherever you are in the world, it's going to work the same. It's consistent, and it's free. But most often, gravity is not your friend throughout your whole entire community. So what we do differently is we take tanks. It could be a tank at each individual home. It could be a very large tank at a school, a church, an airport. Any type of infrastructure, this technology works. And we use those tanks to collect all the raw wastewater, and the solids stay in the tanks. We then just pump the liquid to wherever you need to convey this wastewater, and we can now do it almost as in the same methodology as a water line now. So we have a completely sealed, very small diameter pipe. We don't care about the slopes. We don't care about the undulations of your topography. We don't care if you're 10 miles away. It's going to be much more cost effective to bring that sewer wastewater to wherever you are treating it with a small diameter pipe that's not 15 feet in the ground that took your entire road out for a year to construct. So that's really our collection. And the other thing that it has a benefit as well is a lot of solids get digested in that tank. The city of Glide, 1,200 homes, they have 1 truckload of solids per year from their tank pump outs. 1 truckload. You go to a traditional wastewater treatment plant, and that is a huge undertaking to remove solids. So really what we're doing is we're now providing a new tool in the tool belt, a flexible solution, a cheaper, more cost-effective solution for sewer. That's on the collection side. The other thing that we do, I guess I'll back up. I got ahead of myself. To compare, again, to a traditional gravity sewer, and I've talked to a few individuals at the conference that seem to have these issues in their community. Infiltration and intrusion, so rainwater getting into your sewer system. A gravity sewer, you design your treatment plant off the wettest of weather days, the most flow that that treatment plant will see in the whole 365 days of the year. So what does that do? I did a project in Wyoming, and they were upsizing their lagoon to meet their wettest of wet weather days, and that was 500 gallons per day per person. That's more than a hot tub per person. That's about 10 55-gallon drums of fluid. Why are we designing treatment plants to handle rainwater and that much flow. So looking at this chart, you have two things that are going on. The gravity sewer, not only are you getting inconsistent flows daily and you're treating a lot of rainwater, you're also getting a fluctuation of waste strengths. You're either getting highly diluted waste strength or you're getting a more concentrated waste strength. And you're expecting your operator to be changing things on a fly in rural Oregon to meet DEQ 3-basin rule standards. Why are you doing that to your operator when you could provide a consistent flow to the gallon on a daily basis of less concentrated waste strength? And that is another, I guess, benefit of going with our type of sewer collection system. Yes. Typically, so for Glide, let's use that example. And when we do this, Lacey, Washington, suburb of Seattle, Canby, Oregon, or Coburg, Oregon, outside of Eugene. So it's a very scalable thing. But for instance of Glide, it's 1,200 homes. The largest section of their pipe is 8 inches, and they have tons of capacity. Most often, it's 2-inch, maybe 4-inch PVC pipe. Sometimes, if it's below 4 inches, you can get that on a roll. So now imagine your city's able to directionally bore hundreds of feet of sewer pipe in a day without disrupting your streets in any sense. Why are we not doing that in the Santiam Canyon? Why are we going to give a year and $100 million to take a project that A, will probably never get funded, and B, is going to disrupt the community for years on end implementing the solution, when local companies do have solutions that are a little bit out of the box of the traditional way of thinking? The other thing that we do is treatment, and I think the collection is more something I would like to speak with this group of individuals. But we also do decentralized treatment products, and we're the only one in the country that does it from a single family house in your backyard. Between your septic tank and your drain field, you'd have your own treatment unit. And you see this a lot on the McKenzie, on the Santiam. There's also some protected bodies of water in the United States that mandate, the Chesapeake Bay, Flathead Lake. Those all mandate individual homeowners having a treatment plant before their drain field. That's why the Flathead Lake is one of the cleanest lakes in the world. But we also take that same technology and we scale it to full municipalities. But what having from a single family home to full municipalities and having that scalable equipment, one of the things I hear from communities is we need to design for the 2050 build out. Hey, your city hasn't grown in 30 years and you expect to double in the next 30? Well, let's just build it for what you have today, but make sure it's scalable so when you do hit a certain amount of people, we can add another unit. Let's not build a plant that will never be used to its capacity, and let's make sure we're treating simply wastewater in a sealed, consistent approach. I hope that everyone kind of was clear with what I was saying, but that's all I have for...
You got one more.
Oh, I do have one more? See, I get too excited. The other thing, these are just some examples of some projects. Orenco System's been around since the 80s. We have over 50,000 treatment units throughout the world. We're on a global scale. These are some of the larger collection projects throughout the country, but South Alabama Utilities, Lacey, Washington, Coburg, Oregon, Glide, Oregon, Sutherland, Vero Beach. We're also doing septic tank abatement programs. So they were getting eutrophication in the Indian River, manatees dying off, algae blooms, fish kills, all of those things contributing to high nitrate and phosphorus levels in the wastewater or in their river. But so now what they did is they said we can go septic tank abatement, so we're using existing septic tanks and we're converting them to now be part of a community sewer system. And not only does that, in the end goal, we're actually treating all the wastewater, but this helps with that pushback that you get with the community. Not everybody, I just bought my septic tank. I did it last year, I spent $20,000 and now I'm forced to connect. You see those interactions when you try to do community sewer. Some people don't want to connect, some people do. Some people haven't had working sewer in years and they are just chomping at the bit to connect. Having a feasible, scalable approach to sewer where you can reuse infrastructure allows a little bit more leniency on people connecting to your sewer system with the end goal of everybody getting off of their individual septic tanks.
Awesome. Thank you for that overview of the technology and kind of where it's been deployed in a little bit. Seth, talk to us a little bit about, on the next slide, hit that green, on what
That's a
you
picture.
experienced in Warrenton and kind of why it worked, and highlight that picture, right?
That's a good picture. Got Brandon. Got to give Brandon a shout out. He's the guy back there causing all the trouble. So our project, as I mentioned, we were looking at some of the decentralized capabilities that Orenco has. Ended up going to a Prelos system, which is leveraging. You asked a great question of what is a small pipe. Fort Point, the development out in Warrenton, Oregon, is I think at a 2-inch.
2-inch for a large section of it, and the community is 4-inch, I believe.
Yep. So, we're saving a lot of cost from a development standpoint on conduit and pipe. We are able to phase this. We're not dropping 210, 240 single-family detached homes, tomorrow. We are phasing this in increments, and so that is also something that we have really found and found dynamic with Orenco and 3PO. So overall, yeah, here's a number of key points. We've been able to reduce our cost by roughly 65%. That's hard costs. We had, before we were looking at Orenco and this Prelos system, we had 2 lift stations, which was really the cost of our entire offsites, what it is now. So we're saving a serious amount of dough. We are also, with the strategic partnership between 3PO and Orenco, 3PO has the capability and capacity to co-invest in our projects, which is incredible. They also will bring fiber optic to these rural markets, such as Warrenton. And that's something that they will just lay in the same trench, and that there's a lot of synergies within the design of the sewer that fiber falls in line with. So the ownership and phasing, as I mentioned, we have been able to unlock a lot of, we're able to expedite the time that we're able to get to market with this phasing approach, as well as with the ability to just send I&I, or not send I&I, just send liquid to the wastewater treatment plant. What else am I missing?
I can also touch base, like he said originally, we started this conversation less than a year ago. We're already excavating, and by next year, going to have housing and sewer in the ground. So a year and a half to make this thing happen. I've been a part of sewer boards that have been going on plus 10 years, and nothing has, it's been a many attempts. And I commend every single community member that decides to join a sewer board, because it's not easy. It's a battle. It's an endurance effort.
Thanks, gentlemen. Next up is Steve Rose. Steve is a lead installer and technician with Septec. He travels all over the state. Steve, give us a little bit of intro on yourself and kind of what you do, where you do it, and kind of what you learn. I'll run clicker for you if you don't mind.
Alrighty. So I'm Steve Rose. I'm with Septic Technologies. We do, I've been in the industry for 20 years doing operations and maintenance, and I specialize in large commercial wastewater treatment systems. I'm certified in Oregon and Washington on every system that DEQ offers for residential and commercial. My primary background right now and over the last 15 years has been in commercial wastewater. We don't do municipal systems. We do gas stations, housing developments, apartment complexes, restaurants in rural America. So right along the lines of what everybody up here is talking about. So what I have here is a subdivision. This is a 130 home subdivision. It is attached to a treatment system, okay? Everything on the left, the homes on the left and the right are attached to, those homes have individual septic systems. The housing development in the yellow, the 130 homes, those have a single treatment system. Instead of having individual septic systems, they have one treatment plant, very small, which we'll show you here in a minute. And then as you're looking at that, so it's probably the same for me, on the left, you can see just before the tree line, you'll see some real dark green spots. That's the actual drain field. That's where the sewage goes. So this is in the red on the left there or the right is your treatment system. That consists of 3 30,000 gallon septic tanks. So each one of the homes has a pre-loss system, and those pump the water to the main treatment tanks. The treatment tanks then process it through a set of 12 AX20 or AX100 Advantex treatment systems that Orenco produces. The ones that Orenco showed you were a new system called a max unit. They would take two of the max units would take place of 6 of the Advantex 100s. But the purpose of this slide is that we're able to have 130 homes on pre-loss systems and send it all to a central area for treatment, and we still have to meet the same treatment standards in Oregon for the DEQ of 2020 for BOD and TSS, and then we have to meet we have to do chlorination and denitrification all in this little area. But the area that we do it in is one lot, one buildable lot, as opposed to several blocks of an entire treatment system. This is a close-up view, and sorry, it's really blurry, I'm sure. This housing development is designed for 58,000 gallons a day. That's a lot for a housing development. And it all goes to soil absorption through drip irrigation. So it's completely doable on a large scale. This was designed, this is in Gerhardt, Oregon. It was designed and installed, it's 10, 12 years old. And we just got our last house built out this year. So we're fully built out now. Their flows, because we're not taking in rainwater and surface water from the streets, the flows for 130 homes to the drain field, 11,000 gallons a day, not 58,000. And it's been consistent like that for 5 years. So when we get rid of all that rainwater and stuff and we just treat the wastewater, we can have a much smaller footprint. Go ahead. The big question is maintenance on stuff like this. So on this system, we provide a monthly visit, and that is to collect the lab samples for the DEQ permit. There is no maintenance on monthly visits, and this is only on the main treatment system. This isn't on the individual homes, okay? We do quarterly maintenance on the main treatment system. There's pumps and screens and media and nozzles and stuff to clean. Routine maintenance, it usually takes about 4 or 5 hours for one person. Very inexpensive to do. Annually, so this is where the pre-loss comes in. Annually, we do a third of every one of the homes. So about 40 homes every year. We pull and clean screens. We clean and test pumps. We test the float switches. We calculate all the flows, calibrate all the data, and make sure that the home's doing what it's supposed to do and the system's doing what it's supposed to do. And the reason we do a third of the homes is that over a 3-year period, we can get all of the homes in the subdivision done at the same, that way over 3 years, every home has been looked at. This includes measuring the septic tank portion of that pre-loss system to see whether the homeowner needs to pump that tank or not. So we're not pumping septic tanks prematurely. Septic tanks need the biology in them, and it takes 3 to 5 years to grow biology in a septic tank. If you're pumping them things every few months or every year or something, you're just defeating the purpose of a septic tank. You do get treatment out of a septic tank. Some of the lab results I just saw, which are completely accurate, for influent waste strength coming into a treatment plant or have a BOD of 500, that's well over the DEQ limit for influent waste strength to a treatment system. The BOD on this housing development, which is tested quarterly, is 85. There is no fats, oils, and grease to deal with because it's all trapped in the septic tank or the pre-loss system. Every home that's installed, every home that gets a unit, they all have to have that same unit installed. It's all designed by the engineer. They get a startup by the system operator. So what I do is I go out there and I take the system and I look at it and I check the panel for wiring to make sure the electrician did his job right. I check to make sure that the installer of the system made sure that the pipes were bedded properly, that the pumps work, that everything's per the manufacturer's requirement. Why do I do that? Because the worst thing in the world, and this is the one thing that you guys probably have all heard about septic systems, if you're on one with a pump, is the alarm always goes off. Well, if you haven't checked the construction of your septic system before you have a homeowner move in, you don't know if it was installed properly, wired properly, or anything else. When we took over this 130-unit subdivision, I had alarms going off every day. Now, since we implemented this about 5 years ago of mandatory startups on every home and the 3-year rotation on the homes, we have an alarm maybe once every 4 to 6 months, and it's an actual mechanical failure of a component. All the homeowners are very happy. So this can work for community systems. So, that's all I got.
Thank you, Steve. Well, you've got more. In fact, I'm going to ask the first question of you. You mentioned that you manage commercial systems, and I remember the first time you said that to me, I was thinking commercial systems, like that's not municipal.
No.
But it's also not homeowners, meaning, let's be real, you don't trust homeowners to manage the components and all the widgets themselves.
No.
Am I right?
100%. Okay. Homeowners are their worst enemies. They know enough to be dangerous. So no, that housing development, and that's just one of about 15 that we manage.
All over the state?
What's
your territory?
So my service area is from Astoria to La Grande, and from east-west, and then from Astoria to Coos Bay, and, well, here in Bend, all the way down to Klamath Falls. And so we have a very large area, and we take care of a lot of housing developments. I'm not responsible to the homeowners of these housing developments. I'm responsible to the HOA. They're the ones that write me the check. They're the ones that pay the bill. In all of the housing developments that we manage, the HOA is responsible for repairs, as in a float going bad, a pump going bad, a lid going bad, unless it was negligence by the homeowner. It's my job to determine what caused it. And I've got 20 years experience. I can tell whether a homeowner broke something or whether, it was just natural damage. The homeowner is responsible for pumping the septic tank because that's their sewage. But we manage that, we monitor that so that they're not pumping it every few years. The other part to that is we're under contract with these HOAs that we're the only ones that touch these systems. We don't have Bob's septic system down the road coming in here because the homeowner called him. They're not allowed to touch it. We'll lock we've got a couple developments that we actually lock the control panels.
Right, that makes sense. Well, I promised that we would do Q&A, so we'll have a moment for that here in a bit, but, and Brandon here will have a microphone. Jonathan Honeywell, this question's for you, so Steve, pass the mic. So when you're seeing, let's call it small communities considering their options, what derails proper consideration of all the different options that are available to them? Like what happens in the kind of the inner workings of governments and consultants and engineers that kind of can steer people down the wrong path?
I think that is a pretty tough question to answer in a simple way.
But you're the guy. You're the guy I'm counting on for that.
There's many things involved in sewer that shouldn't be involved. A lot of it is politics. You're relying on community members to step up for their community, to volunteer their time monthly for years on end to come to a conclusion on what's best for the community. They may, in their head, think it is the best solution. You only know what you know. And a lot of times they want to rush, it feels like a rushed process. We need to get this engineer on board. He's going to be an advocate for us. He's the expert. We need to apply for funding, but you got to spend that funding within 2 years. You know, it's a hurry up and wait, but feel rushed the entire process, and then have people tasked to do this that aren't trained in how to get funding, what is a sewer. You know, I think those are probably the main points that make it such a cumbersome and convoluted process, is there really isn't a blueprint. Every city's doing it a little bit different in Oregon. DEQs are all maybe not on the same page. In a sense they are, but they all operate a little bit differently. So it's a huge task for community members to get together with 5 other individuals and make the best, or what they think is the best choices for their city. And you know, sometimes when you have money to buy a Ferrari, why would I buy a Toyota? Well, the Toyota is going to get you 250,000 miles. The Ferrari is going to look good for 20,000 miles. So,
What should be done differently? You know, if your communities are at the beginning, right? Maybe they've been put under a consent decree that says, hey, in order to keep developing at the pace you think you want to develop, you have to come up with some sort of a treatment.
I think education, you know, reach out, find the different technologies, have manufacturers of these different technologies come in, present, educate the group. You know, we're not a panacea. You wouldn't want a step collection system in downtown Seattle, but you don't want gravity system in rural Glide, Oregon. So, you know, find out what your tools are, come up with the best strategy, and direct this engineer, hey, we're going to go this route. You know, you are our engineer, we hired you, but us as community members, we're smart enough to know what living in our community is like, and you know, where these lots are, where the septic tanks are, what the overall opinion of the community, how much money is available. Those are all things that the community members know, and you can educate yourself as community members to a point where you have enough ability to direct engineers, or at least call the BS, ask the questions. And I think just simply getting to a point where you can ask the questions and be a little bit hesitant when individuals have a percentage of an overall price of a project, and that's in the cards. It's naive to not think that that's being, you know, steering a project.
Right. Seth, this next question's for you. So in terms of the dollars and cents, looking at kind of these alternative business models, first it was an alternative technology, but also alternative business model. Like, give us some numbers. Like, what's the magnitude of the savings, and what were you surprised about when you started to run the numbers on what a decentralized sewer and fiber solution yielded as a developer?
Yeah. So I think we showed that slide. It was about 65% in terms of savings.
So from 6 million to...
Yeah, about 2. It was, yeah, closer to 3. But that also does not incorporate the co-invest, right? From a development standpoint, whether I'm a city or I'm working with the city or I'm a private developer for profit, you know, the ability to have a source of capital, I think green is green, right? Everybody understands the value of a dollar, and that goes a long way. And that the ability to partner with someone who is contributing something at such a, I guess, a dynamic level, right, with sewer and fiber, there's a lot of synergies that can collectively be put together there.
As a developer, what's your appetite for ongoing operations and maintenance on a system like that?
I mean, the ability to have someone like Mr. Rose, I would do that 10 times out of 10.
Yeah.
I mean,
You want to build it, exit, head out?
From a land development standpoint, you know, really on anything that we're doing from a mixed-use master plan standpoint. So for like Fort Point, for instance, we're entitling the land, we're getting the land into a place where we can either through another entity of our own, or we hire another builder who's either local or can really absorb a 450 unit project. You know, anybody in the building space is not necessarily in the sewage space, and so to be able to hand that off to a professional, able to have that option is invaluable in my.
What was your experience with the city? like exploring like a different way of approaching it? Like what did it unlock? What were the initial impressions? How did you get past whatever, pushback? I'm not saying there was pushback, but like what was that reaction like as you went into the project?
Yeah, I mean, when we were basically informed that, hey, this timeline does not align with our timeline, the development's timeline in terms of getting product to market, right? Housing units to market. That obviously was, okay, how do we, let's problem solve mode.
Was this
right?
a capacity issue, meaning their upgrading of their wastewater was a long?
Yeah, so in Warrenton right now, they are at capacity, right? It's public knowledge, they are at capacity, and 450 units, even 50 units is going to be, that's a lot, especially when you're at capacity. And we don't want to say the M word, but no one wants the M word. So from our standpoint, we were looking at how do we fix our timeline to where we get, everybody gets the best of both worlds, right? There's the opportunity to inject housing quicker, but the wastewater treatment plant is not being affected really with the solids, with the INI. And that's where we, again, ran into Orenco, and they introduced the preload system. So
I want to just add to that. This 65% is a clean slate project. No streets to rip up, small distance of run, probably a mile and a half. Now take that to an existing system where you're ripping up the street and you're going 15, 20 miles. What are those cost savings? I bet that it's a much higher percentage than 65%.
I'll also add, it's been, one second, it's also given us the opportunity to increase density, right? There's a lot of other opportunities that I'm looking at from a development standpoint around the West Coast, whether that's in Maui or whether that's in, Bend, Oregon. Yeah, there's opportunities out there to where they may be in unincorporated areas, which is where 1537 comes into play, and you're able to come in and provide a source of, or capacity to where, housing wouldn't really be available without it.
Excellent. Well, we've got about 15 minutes left, and we've got some people with questions. If you would do us a favor, give us your first name, where you're from, and direct your question to a person. Otherwise, I'll field it and do that. But
Okay,
thank you.
We have one right here waiting.
Hi, Mindy Garlington from Gladstone. First of all, I want to say the whole idea of having your HOA put in for something like that, I commend that for the simple reason that it's already spelled out for a home buyer. They understand that. It's there. It's not going to change. I like that idea. I have a question for you about, it's probably kind of convoluted because I'm not exactly sure exactly how all this works, but when you put out the cleaner water from the filtration system, is your municipalities offering any kind of a discount for not having the solids? Do you understand?
Yes, I understand,
Okay.
and they are not, but I don't think the time has been spent truly measuring what cost savings you are getting from the reduced solids production. But in the grand scheme of things, I think you would end up getting more capacity at your treatment plant, and that does two things. You can add customers and you can increase revenue. But there also should be some credits as far as I'm concerned, with the decreased amount of loading that the homeowner is now providing the treatment plant.
I agree. I was just wondering if any of the projects that you've done, they've offered that incentive.
They have not, and we kind of started to collect the data to bring our case to Warrenton. The other thing that this project particularly will really benefit, I think, the state of Oregon is since fiber optics is coupled with our technology, we're going to be able to get real-time data in a mass scale of this 400 home development, and we're going to know exactly what pounds of loading we're sending to the treatment plant. And then we have a stance to argue, why are we being charged the same? There are communities, and this just came to me, but Lacey, Washington, for instance, they have grinder systems, gravity systems, and step collection all in their community in different areas. And their ratepayers actually do have a different rate depending on what part of the community and what collection you're on.
Yeah, we've been arguing for commercial rates, for instance. I would say I started this talk with disruption, right? And, you know, when a municipality has the authority to set rates, there needs to be a discussion around what would compel them to move away from those rates, right? What's in it for them? And so I would say we're probably in the early stages of that, but it's nice to hear that there are some progressive communities that have thought about it. Got another question over here.
I think this one may be for Jonathan. I'm not sure. Under sewer collection, we have a fairly modern sewer plant, less than 10 years old. In terms of upgrading the system, say we've got a city block that we want to replace the existing sewer lines and so forth. Can we utilize your technology sectionally throughout the town?
You can, and Terrebonne, Oregon is one community that's doing that currently. They will be taking the downtown commercial area first, and they will be sending all of their effluent to the new Redmond treatment plant. But that's a heck of a run to send wastewater, and using our technology allows that. Another town that I'm doing that with is Falls City, Washington, where they are handling their commercial section, putting in tanks, and just sending that effluent. The one really good thing, and it grinds my gears, honestly, because we now have the technology to move this wastewater away from bodies of water. Why are we changing three basin rules, regulations, making them less strict because they don't want to utilize technology to move wastewater away from our bodies of water? And that's just me I guess that's a personal opinion.
Other questions from the audience in the front?
My name is Tyler from City of Sandy. We have a moratorium and a consent decree. Super fun. And I guess I'm just curious, with your systems, how has it been to work with DEQ, and what has that process been like?
I mean, it's similar in all of them. You're getting an engineer to develop a plan set to work alongside Arenco as a manufacturer that agrees with their design and submits through the DEQ process. Usually on a large-scale municipal project, everybody should be in the room in the beginning, and you know, you are, as the manufacturer, directing the engineer so their process takes less time, and then they can smoothly submit their information to the DEQ. But the DEQ overall, I think, is a proponent of Arenco. We've been doing it for 40 years. They know our systems. So usually once the plan set's done and the DEQ's already somewhat on board, it's a pretty smooth process.
Steve, along those lines, are you involved in reporting on package plants up to the DEQ? Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like from a, let's call this a commercial system? So municipal treatment, certified treatment professionals have reporting requirements. When it's a commercial system, what is that like in your universe?
So a commercial system, it depends on the permit. When we refer to commercial systems, we refer to a WPCF permit or an NPDS. Municipal systems typically have an NPDS, which allows them to discharge straight to a river or body of water. Their reporting is typically going to be, some are daily, some are monthly, some are weekly. 99% of all the ones that I manage that Septec takes care of, while we do have a couple of the NPDSs, the NPDS that we take care of report monthly with lab samples directly to DEQ. We do that online. We fill out all the paperwork. We handle all the letters, the compliance letters, everything that's involved with that. On the WPCF permits, the more standard commercial systems, those are reported on an annual basis, usually due into DEQ on their form by the 15th of February. We actually got a change a couple years ago. It used to be January 15th, which was ridiculous. Anyway, so we, as a maintenance and service provider and operator of these systems, we take all the lab samples, we monitor all the flows, we record all of the maintenance that goes on with the entire system throughout the year or the reporting period, and then we fill out all the paperwork, we submit the paperwork to DEQ for the owner of the property. And then they get a copy for their records because they need to have it on site. But the owner of the property doesn't have to do any of it. We take care of all of it for them.
Thank you. We've got a question back here right behind you. Hold on, wait for Brandon's, he's slow, but he's handsome.
Thank you. My name's Carolyn with the City of Wilsonville. So can city staff ever do some of the work that you're doing, Steve, with monitoring?
Yes. So the owners, because it's cost prohibitive to have me out there to read a flow meter or a water meter or any of that stuff, because DEQ requires the data monthly. We train staff on site to record it. They submit it to my office. We calculate the data and apply it to the form. So yes, we will train people to do the day-to-day equipment and maintenance and stuff that isn't the technical part of watching the microorganisms grow and measuring tanks and stuff like that. The one thing that I will say about some of these larger systems is in residential and in commercial, all of this equipment and stuff is really nice and it does a lot of good stuff and it's very, very good at what it does. The drawback comes, if you want to call it that, is people need to learn how to maintain this stuff properly. If it's not maintained properly, it'll go south really fast. It's like buying the expensive car, buying the Maserati or the Lamborghini, and thinking, yeah, I should just go ahead and change the oil myself. There's a lot of things that mechanic looks at when he's looking at that oil that us average homeowners and stuff, they don't just look at. They just go change the oil and drive it on until it breaks. So.
Well, that's probably a good spot to end the panel and Q&A section. You know, I was pleased that we were able to get this group coalesced because we have a developer who's doing it. We have a technology, local manufacturer who's building it and deploying all over the world, frankly. And then a subject matter expert who literally takes care of it on the ground. And so you see the whole cycle here. The announcement that I promised you is just yesterday to coincide with the 99th Annual League of Oregon Cities event, we started the Community Sewer Coalition. And the purpose of the Community Sewer Coalition is to create a national association where stakeholders come together and work to resolve some of the issues that are holding back housing and holding communities back from exploring the alternatives, from taking advantage of the technologies that are out there. You know, our mission, we'd love to save $1 billion by serving 1,000 small communities. That's actually a real number. We could save $1 billion for small communities, 1,000 small communities. And what we're going to be focusing on in the coalition is fact-based decision-making and data. You know, one of the challenges as we come into this innovation phase is we actually have some amazing technology. It already exists. We don't have to reinvent the technology. It's actually the business models and the conversations and the data that is going to drive long-term solutions. We're also going to be advocating for transparency. We don't think that the traditional large engineering firms have accurately represented the capabilities and the benefits of alternative technologies, particularly for smaller communities. They tend to get funded by grants. They do preliminary engineering designs, which take 12 to 18 months. The money's spent, the direction has been established, and then the bill is presented, and it's something that small community can't afford. Our ambition, our goal, our belief is that if communities are presented more options earlier, they're going to be able to make wiser decisions for their community. So, good news. Municipalities, authorities having jurisdictions can join the coalition at no charge. It is actually going to be the ecosystem stakeholders that have to carry the freight inside the coalition, but really the academics and the community members are a key part of what makes a coalition really work, and we've got some really, really smart people from around the country that are going to put their shoulder to this. If you are interested in anything that was shared, you can, of course, reach out to us, but you'll see, I put the URL on the slide. If you visit that website and hit /LOC, all of those slides are there for you at this time. I should have said that a little bit earlier. We'll just leave that up for a little bit. We thank you for your rapt attention during this panel. It's been a pleasure for us to present, and we do encourage you to reach out. We're here to serve, so thank you. Give our panel a warm round of applause.